Present.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Councilmember Shrevenick.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Will you all please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is the agenda approval. Unless I hear any objections, I'm going to consider the agenda approved. Any objections? Okay. And then we've got citizen comment. This is your opportunity to express your views and issues on issues that are important to you in the community. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and it's going to have your time up on the screen behind me for your comments. Clerk, can you call the first person up?
Joanna Crocker.
Good evening, and this is about surface water management. I decided to come to the meeting tonight when I saw the topic, and I would just like to provide a quick cautionary tale from the other side of the continent. A few years ago, on a really rainy, cold night, just like it is here, a beaver dam on a farm on a hill broke, and an enormous amount of water came down and took out a big chunk of my family farm, a lot of equipment, and the main road for people from one village to get to work in the nearest small city. And it took over a year for things to be changed. So I just thought about that and thought, surface water management's a big deal, and I hope that little cautionary tale is helpful to all of you as you go forward on that topic tonight. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to say my address into the record, which is, my full name is Joanna Crocker, 7301 Northeast 175 Street, Kenmore. Thank you.
Jim Perkins.
Thank you. Not a very good public speaker, maybe a worse reader, but I'll try with this. I wish I could have been here last week for that meeting, but I was in Portland for family business. After going to quite a few,
I'm sorry,
yeah, Jim Perkins, and I've had a presence down the street with the 2 mobile home parks since 1966.
Okay.
After going to quite a few Kenmore Planning Commission meetings in the last 11 months, I felt fairly comfortable that the commission was exhaustively looking at all the options for this difficult subject. There was not a great deal of concern from my tenants, evidenced by their minimal attendance at the Planning Commission meetings compared to other parks. In my interview with Kenmore staff and the Arch person, I mentioned that the property had been listed for sale previously and that I assured many of my tenants that I would do whatever I could to soften the blow that they knew was a possibility. It was always my intention to sell the one on the north side of Northeast 181st, which is the least economically viable. It has only 11 units, only 9 are occupied, 1 family and 8 individuals. And it's on 1 acre of highly prized downtown property. With the potential sale of this property, I had intended to invest in the park across on the south side of Northeast 181st and fully in hope to house some of the people who would be displaced. It seems to me that at some point, whether it's 10 years or 1 year, people are going to be displaced. It's just going to happen. It has to. And I can't believe that we can visualize these 2 parks with 40 and 50-year-old completely immobile mobile homes because you can't move them anywhere, which is going to fall upon the landlord in your downtown core. And this was the substance of what I got from the Planning Commission. I've always kept rents a little lower as an incentive to keep long-term tenants. If I raise them to the market rate now, many of these people will sell or in some cases abandon the home, which has already happened because they're scared. Unlike the tenants on the slough who have quite a bit more invested in their homes, some of which are double wides. No one in my park paid more than $10,000 and many less in the last 10 or 20 years, and they've been there a long time. An article in the Seattle Times last week referenced the city of Seattle getting a ruling that will allow upzones in neighborhoods for affordable housing, with the affordable units making up 5 to 11% of a project. That's less than half the amount I was willing to stipulate in any sale in my interview with the staff last winter. Recently, the Kenmore staff showed beautiful architectural drawings of projects in Bellevue and Redmond of what could be in downtown Kenmore with affordable housing incentives. You could easily have twice or 3 times as many affordable units as currently exist on the north side of Northeast 181st.
Mr. Perkins, could you please wrap up?
Sorry.
It's okay.
My last sentence was, the pizzazz that Kenmore is looking for, and the planning commission chair had hoped to see.
Matt Lacy.
Hello, council and staff. I understand that the council tonight will be deliberating on the possibility of reallocating some funds from King County to be used for recreational and sport-focused opportunities here in Kenmore. And it was just weeks ago that you took the amazing step to secure a future for residents to take advantage of Lake Washington by establishing a foundation for a future boathouse in Rhododendron Park. And tonight, with the possibility of these funds perhaps becoming reallocated, I'm hoping you consider moving towards the potential, or taking this potential boathouse and turning it into a reality with walls and a roof. While true, there could be other avenues of potential support, they could still result in a staged project that will take years to finish and add additional project cost along the way. I hope we see an opportunity tonight to strike while the iron is hot. People are rowing in Kenmore now, just as they were in Seattle, Everett, Renton, Bellevue, and 20 other cities around the Northwest. Stories are happening now as we speak. Students that live in Kenmore are rowing and using it to pursue their dreams of becoming a collegiate athlete. You might hear one of those stories in just a couple seconds. So the dream that we wanted to see is actually happening, and there could be an opportunity tonight to solidify that opportunity for future generations. I'm hoping that we take a moment to secure the building of this boathouse. Remove the terms opportunity and potential from this conversation and replace them with achievements and ribbon cutting, and then watch the rowing community take to the water and create more stories of gratitude. We can become Kenmore on the water, Kenmore on the lake instead of Kenmore by the lake. Very exciting. Onwards and upwards, and much gratitude for getting that foundation squared away. Now we just have to finish the project. Thank you.
Pam Marshall.
I would like to yield to any of the juniors.
Hi, I'm Leah Johnson, and this is Jack Nussbaum, and we're co-captains of the Inglemoor High School rowing team, and we're also here tonight to advocate for the new boathouse.
So, as a rower at Inglemoor High School, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity I've had. Crew has been an amazing opportunity for both me and all my teammates, and we've gained great experiences through our rowing. We have developed a strong, supportive community of student athletes, and a boathouse will help us sustain this for all those generations who follow behind us. As we look towards the future, we see great opportunity for both our team and for rowers in our community to continue and excel at this sport.
As Jack said, rowing for Inglemoor High School has been an incredible opportunity for us and everyone on the team. I've had the opportunity to be recruited for the University of Washington rowing program this fall, and I really hope to extend this amazing opportunity to all my teammates and future rowers. Having a boathouse would help cement the future of our program. Thank you.
Phyllis Finley.
Phyllis Finley, Kenmore. So I have a two-part comment about grant funds tonight. Part one. When deciding how to reallocate the $611,000 grant funds, please consider a project that will benefit the greatest number and the greatest demographic of Kenmore children. A project in which a child does not have to join a club or a program in order to participate can be relevant for families whose lifestyle and circumstances cannot accommodate a club or a team schedule and other requirements. A project such as our City Hall skate park is open to all and allows for valuable and active free play regardless of economic or family circumstances. I would support the redirection of the $611,000 grant funds to support a city school partnership that would benefit every school child in our city. Part 2. The city again has the opportunity to pursue legislative funding for ball field development with the school district in the next round of legislative grant funding. Earlier this year, the city declined this option by claiming that there wasn't enough time before the March 2018 deadline to coordinate with the school district on a plan. Can you please help me and Kenmore taxpayers understand how the city is planning to be proactive during this coming round of grant funding? What will the city do to ensure that it gives itself enough time and resources this year to have an agreement in place to present to RCO by the March 1st, 2020 deadline? This is a long lead time. You can easily call RCO records for several joint projects, so this is not reinventing the wheel. There's lots of precedent for such agreements. Can you please help me and Kenmore taxpayers understand why the city is not actively and wholeheartedly pursuing this opportunity? The city has repeatedly claimed that it needs more ball fields. Can you please help me and Kenmore taxpayers understand your willingness to continue to spend money pursuing the lease of a St. Edward field while making no apparent progress on the partnership with the school district for use of their ball fields? On the St. Ed's project, the city of Kenmore has already spent over $342,000, will spend another $300,000 on the EIS, has earmarked another $500,000 in a future budget for the continuation of this project. Can you please help me and Kenmore taxpayers understand at what point you will decide that this amount of expenditure is just too much? Can you tell us, please, what is your top dollar? When will you say that's enough? Or are you planning to just spend endlessly while excluding other viable options? One more sentence. Please pursue a viable partnership with the school district, apply for grant funding, and let Kenmore citizens begin using already established ball fields that you say we so desperately need. Thank you.
There's nobody else signed up.
Does anybody else wish to speak? You'll just give your name and where you're up at the podium, please. Your name, your city, and then you'll need to sign in with the city clerk.
I already
afterwards.
did. My name is Pam Marshall. I actually live in Woodinville, but I am the manager, whatever, of the Masters Kenmore Rowing Club. My goal here is to explain what we bring to the table and why we do support this reallocation of funding to the boathouse. You need both sides. You need the juniors and the masters for a viable program. Masters bring stability. Juniors are there for approximately 4 years. Masters can row from the time they're 25 until they can't get in a boat anymore at 80 or older. They build your culture. They bring governance. They'll be the ones that take care of the launches. They'll be the ones who do the boat repair. They will be volunteering to do all this, to do the volunteer work that is necessary to maintain a boathouse. We also bring money. For example, I was at Sammamish for 10 years. My daughter rowed at Sammamish for 3 to 4 years. We needed a turn lane on Westlake Sammamish Parkway. If you've ever been there in the late afternoon, you know that it's a very dangerous strip of road to try to get onto. A husband, he had 2 boys that rowed, but his wife was continuing to row after his sons graduated. He donated $25,000 to build this turn lane in front of in Westlake Sammamish Parkway. They will be buying the boats. They will be providing equipment. And this is why we need this boathouse here. Kenmore has an opportunity to be the second East Side club. Sammamish takes people from all the way from Monroe to Mount Si. And we have an opportunity to fill a gap for both the kids and the adults who wish to row. This is national level competition. This will bring Kenmore to the forefront in this state, in this area. So I would like to again express my support for the reallocation of this money to the boathouse. It also, by the way, since I have more time, a boathouse gives safety. These kids come off the water in the fall and in the early spring, and they're so close to hypothermia. They need a place where they can change clothes, stay warm. It provides safety for the equipment. It is a place where people can congregate, where they can plan, where they can practice off the water when the water's too rough. Boats don't go out in whitecaps. It's too dangerous. So that's why I really support this reallocation of funding. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. John Hendrickson, Kenmore, Washington. I want to talk to you tonight about the claims in your budget report that, as your shortfall in taxes, you've been victimized by this 1% limit in property tax increase annually without voters' approval and the loss of sales tax equalization. Now, the last time I was here, I gave you a summary of our original feasibility study when we became a city, and it talked about how we had this surplus that folks went out, and I think Deborah Shrubnik was part of them with the incorporation process, and Milton Curtis, that we were going to have this surplus. But actually, if you read the fine print in the back of the book, the sales tax equalization wasn't going to be there. We knew it wasn't going to be there. We weren't going to have a surplus. Plus, the police costs were grossly underestimated. So there was no, if you did your due diligence, even with simple negligence level, you would know that we didn't have a surplus. But the public was told that we did. So is the public being victimized by government workers, or are you being victimized by the public who votes for a 1% limit in property tax and the I-695 repeal? So if I go to the 1% increase every year, if you go back to our original bank capacity calculation in 2000, we only had 2.1 million, I think, of property tax in our calculation. For $1.60 is what we're allowed to calculate. But they gave us 3.4 million in bank capacity. And the reason they did that was they gave us not just $1.60 per thousand, but they gave us 50 cents per thousand for the library and 30 cents per thousand on the fire benefit charge from the fire district. People don't know it, but when you vote for the fire benefit charge, if they don't use that 50 cents, the city can take it and impose it, which we've done in the past. So we actually started out with about over $1 million of excess bank capacity, this 80 cents over our $1.60. So that's 50% increase. That's 50 years of 1% increase at the very beginning of our calculation. So, I bet you I can take you to court and I can get that repealed. But you don't say that. You say you're being victimized by the 1%. Sales tax equalization, back in the late 90s, a SUV cost $850 in car tabs. That money went for sales tax equalization to cities like ours. It was repealed. And we were told in our book that you should expect that to be repealed. So we knew it, but we were deceiving the public saying we had a big surplus and we knew we weren't going to have one. So are you the victims, or are you victimizing us with false information, just like you did 20 years ago, as you've done all along when you denied our road taxes, as you've done all along when you've denied that we pay road taxes every year and you say we don't. That's over $90 million accumulated to date, and you deny it. And then you're going to do this campaign to deceive the public, saying that you've been victimized, when it's really a campaign to victimize us. Tell the truth, then we can work together.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak? All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. I understand that one of us has, I think Councilman Marshall has a couple of questions on, I think one of the items, maybe two of the items. Do you want to bring those up?
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Herbig. I just had a comment about the mobile home park communities in subsection G, the land use changes, and it's probably no surprise that everybody had known that I felt that all the mobile homes in Kenmore, all the communities should be treated equally, and that we should value diversity and try to protect all the existing mobile home parks. But I did have a question on the critical areas ordinances and the question about herbicides and the change from actively discouraging use of herbicides to encouraging an appropriate use. And it's great if any of the staff could briefly address that if they feel they can now or otherwise.
I recommend you pull it off consent if you want to have questions answered.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I would ask to do that.
All right, so
Just
we're
a
going to
question
pull,
for herbicides.
we're going to pull item G off of the consent agenda. With item G pulled, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda.
So moved. Second?
All right. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. Let's now go into the business agenda. We'll start off with item G that was pulled off the consent agenda. Do we have anybody that can address Councilmember Marshall's questions?
I don't think we do. Yeah, doesn't look like we do have somebody here to address those. That's one reason why I like to get a heads up. If you have questions on something on the consent, then I can have somebody here to answer those questions.
Yeah. Trying to figure out the best way to dispose of this, though.
But between Brian and I, we could take a stab at it.
Yeah, that's in general what I was thinking of.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Hampson?
Although I've been on the outskirts on this topic, we've been in meetings and stuff, and if we get too far into the aquatic weeds, we might have to come back later to answer the questions.
So is there any general sense you could give what the change was to address from the language that actively discouraged, I think, use of herbicides to saying we encourage appropriate use? I think that's what it was.
It's my understanding that we're trying to align our codes with state codes, state laws, and allow the use of herbicides that are allowed by state law without have to go through extra hoops.
Yeah, we really try to follow the guidance of Department of Ecology. They're among the strictest in the nation. But yeah, if you're uncomfortable with that language and want to go back to the old language, we can certainly do that. But it would probably mean moving it to a later meeting agenda, which isn't the end of the world.
Right. Yeah, I was just, I was uncomfortable with the shift, and I don't fault the staff or anybody other than myself for not having delved into it enough or brought it up beforehand, but I do feel uncomfortable with the shift in emphasis. It could be that it's utterly justified by, as you state, the state regulations and guidelines, but it's interesting in the change in the policy sort of direction.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Is it also important to keep that language, given that we are trying to manage aquatic weeds, both at Squires and I know we have problems at Arrowhead where there's a whole committee that was formed around this issue, and this is, kind of not trivial. And so I know it's been a management issue.
It has, and the new language will be easier for us to administer.
Yeah.
I don't think the old language will prohibit us from administering it. It just aligns us with the Department of Ecology and state's language.
Yeah, and like Councilmember Shribnick said, we've been using herbicides on aquatic weeds, and there are environmental benefits to doing so. It gets rid of the invasive weeds and improves fish habitat. But this is your policy, and we want you to be comfortable with it. So if you're not comfortable with this, we can certainly bring it forward later.
Yeah, I'd move that we schedule or plan to bring up the herbicide policy at a later date.
I'll second his motion for the sake of discussion.
Is that a clear enough motion, Kelly? Is later
Yes.
date acceptable, or do we need to do a date certain, or are we just tabling it? What?
I think we can say a later date at this
Okay.
point, unless you want to be more specific.
The body's happy with that. I think we're fine. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Danuski.
No, I'm just like to say I am comfortable with the way that this ordinance is written.
Councilmember Smith?
Likewise, I feel like it makes sense to be consistent with state law, and it'll help us be a little more clear as far as just dealing with these issues going forward. And so I understand Councilmember Marshall's concerns, but I think it makes sense to have consistency.
Anybody else? All right, Councilmember Marshall.
Oh, yeah, and I just thought a little bit more in-depth discussion of what state law requires and what we might have the discretion to change would be helpful, given that I'm sure we'd all like to discourage excessive or harmful use of pesticides. And also, I think it's important for the public to know more about the issue as well.
Councilmember Curtis.
I know we did have some extensive input in previous council members before you came on, and that might be exactly what you're looking for.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the motion.
Councilmember Curtis?
No.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski? No. Deputy Mayor Herbig?
No.
Councilmember Shribnick?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Fails.
All right, that moves us back to the main motion, well, the main ordinance. I guess I don't have a motion. Councilmember Curtis.
I would just comment that maybe the staff could get all that old information that we had. We spent several sessions, as I remember, at council meetings studying aquatic weeds, and we had maps, and we had the different types of killers available and how safe they were, and we had a lot of information. So I think it's important we get that to everybody who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, we paid a consultant and got a decent report put together. And any other discussion? All right, the chair will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 180476, amending the land use element, including the land use plan map, amending the downtown sub-element, amending the housing element, and amending the natural environment sub-element of the comprehensive plan.
So moved?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Shribnick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
No.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Passed.
All right. That brings us to item A of our business agenda, update and options for the reallocation of the King County grant funds for the St. Edwards Ball Field project to an alternative park project. Debbie Bent, Community Development Director, and Ann Stanton, Parks Park Projects Manager. Looks like we may just have Ann today.
Good evening, council members. This agenda item, can you hear me, is to ask council direction on whether to request that King County approve a reallocation of the $611,000 St. Edward Ballfield grant to another city project. The St. Edward Ballfield project will be unable to meet the grant requirement that work is completed by 2021 due to the addition of the EIS process by state parks.
And could you move your microphone just a little bit closer? Yeah.
Yeah, there, it was sticking.
Thank you.
To be eligible for this funding, another project would need to meet the grant program criteria to serve under-resourced youth. That means youth up to 24 years old, and reduce barriers to access physical activity. A reallocation will need to be approved by the King County Council and their bond council. And again, the project needs to be able to be designed, permitted, and constructed by 2021. There have been a number of ideas proposed for this request. Here are some of them, and a check of their fit with this grant. So St. Edward's Field, yes, it served youths and sports. We were unable to meet the 2021 deadline and did not have city control. It was in the CIP, however. The skate park roof, again, yes, it serves youth activity and sports. We're not sure if it could meet the 2021 deadline. It's not in the CIP, but it is under city control. City Hall Park, not sure how well it would compete under this grant process. It consists of two I'll show you the plan in a moment. We're not sure if we could meet the 2021 construction deadline. It is under city control, and it's not currently in the CIP. The boathouse pretty clearly fits all the criteria that we've been talking about. And the Bastyr field drainage, while it definitely would support youth sports and youth activity, we don't believe we could get this completed, an agreement with Bastyr, and get the design, permitting, and construction completed by 2021. It's not under city control, and it's not in the CIP, but there may be other ideas as well. Here's a look. I wanted you to see the City Hall Park. The grant could complete the play structures, the half basketball court, and the plaza. The driveway would be removed, and these items would be rated by King County Council and their grant staff as for its effect on physical activity. And the target for youth is 60 minutes a day, 60 minutes or more a day of physical activity. And so you've seen the boathouse plans recently. This graphic shows the distance that our youth would travel to access rowing clubs without a Kenmore facility. The yellow dot is at Rhododendron Park, and the blue dot shows the private Lakeside School facility. So there's a 15-mile radius, and you can see there's kind of a wasteland there. So adding this grant to this project would mean you could complete the full boathouse, providing the additional space needed to operate youth programs. It could allow the city to complete the work with or without the school district funds, unless the cost estimates that we have are drastically off, which I don't believe they are. We would find out. There is one more deadline at work, and that's to build the full boathouse. The existing shoreline permit for that does also expire in April 28th of 2022. So that means it needs to be built in no later than in the summer of 2021. So if the boathouse is selected for this request, then design would pause until the decision was made by the county. And depending on timing, this may delay bidding until the winter of the following year, say January 2020. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions? Councilmember Shrubnik?
So a couple of clarifications. So I understand if I'm understanding correctly, if we reallocated part of all of this funds to the boathouse, that would actually delay construction to winter of 2020 is what I think I heard you say,
Oh, it would
correct?
delay construction one summer. Instead of next summer, it would be the following summer, unless you wanted us to proceed, that's the conservative approach. We could proceed with a design for the full boathouse at this time and stay on track for building it next summer. However, if the funding didn't come through, then we would have to, if the funding, well, we want to go to bid in, say, April of this coming year. And we can't award a bid unless we have the funding to complete it. So I don't expect you would want to award a construction project on a grant that we hadn't gotten approval for. So that's why the conservative process would be to wait to bid it until we have the grant
So it would,
decision.
instead it would be bid a year later?
Yes.
So it'd be April of 2020?
Yes.
To be finished
It could be
summer of 2020?
yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing that I just wanted to make sure I understood is that this isn't simply a reallocation. We would have to actually compete on, is that what I heard?
We would have to get approval. This is not our decision to make. It's a King County Council approval. And
So, just to make sure I understand still, so this grant would be similar to applying for a first time? Would it be competing on that basis? I'm thinking
No,
of the City Hall Park piece.
This is, maybe, Rob, you have some input on this, but this was an allocation that the county council member, Rod Dembowski, actually lobbied for and acquired for us. And so it wasn't something we went out and competed for. So
Yeah, my understanding is that it won't be like we're applying for it for the first
Okay.
time, that we'll be competing, but that we'll have to ask Councilmember Dembowski to sponsor this change and take it to the full King County Council.
Got it, okay. Okay.
Councilmember Curtis.
My question is similar. Do we have, has anybody either on staff or our mayor been in contact with Dembowski and other people on the city council to see what timeline we might expect and how favorable this request might be?
We've had a few short conversations with Councilmember Dembowski. Didn't get a good sense of timeline, but I think we could probably get approval before April.
In general, I'm definitely in favor of this project, but I would hate to lose a whole nother year and then have it fall through. So in an ideal world, we'd get some answer by April. In the meantime, we would have already started designing the full meal deal, and then we're ready to go with funding at that point. So let's say we took that route where we designed the whole thing, and then the funding did fall through. It seems like we've done some big projects before where we had some things that were optional and we just take them away, and that was relatively easier than not designing them in the first place. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
So then we could go back to the half-court deal, the half boathouse and get that done next year? Or did we miss the whole opportunity?
No, we could do that. It might mean that we have a contract with our engineers to do either one or the other right now. So we might have to add some funding to their contract to make those changes, but we definitely could. And it could be that we could get an answer by December, and we could be full speed ahead and build it next summer on schedule. That's very possible.
So I think with the information I have at this point, I'd be inclined to allocate some extra funds, do the full design, and hope for the best. Quick enough to actually get the whole thing built sooner than later.
Councilmember Danuski.
So I am in favor of the boathouse in general, although I would like to throw out that the City Hall Park would be a good use of it. That was developed, the plan was developed in 2012, and we've done a lot to get our citizens to the water, and that's just kind of been sitting on the back burner. The skate park you see is used like crazy. If the skate park falls in the grant categories, I would assume that a basketball court would as well. It seems kind of like a similar level of activity. And I did actually apply for this grant for Kenmore Elementary play equipment in the past and got it for that. So off the top of my head, I'd say that we probably would be successful in that. We have a huge, large mobile home community who don't have access to play and outdoors. We've got a lot of new units across. I think it kind of fits with our goal of a vibrant, walkable downtown. So it's definitely something I would like to see finished off, since we'd started this before ball fields, before boathouses, all of that. Although I do like the boathouse too. So I'm not against the boathouse, but I'd like to see this project finished.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes, Ann, could you tell us, do you have an approximate cost? I know it's not in our CIP, but for the City Hall Park project?
I did look at the 2014 cost estimate, and I did what I could to update it. It's very upper level, and it was about $500,000.
About $500,000, okay. And then the only other question I had on that, with the location of the half-court basketball, it's planned right next to the City Hall building, and I'm wondering, I don't know enough about acoustics, but I'm wondering if there's potentially any problem with the noise of that being right next to the building, or just knowing that I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I just am curious, because it does seem like it potentially could be a problem, but I was wondering if that's ever been discussed.
Not to my knowledge. The only thing I have observed about use out there is there are an awful lot of people walking their dogs out there from the units. They really have made use of that open space. They've cleaned up after themselves.
Okay. Well, as somebody who pushed 10 years ago for the basketball court at Rhodey Park and seeing the success of that, this definitely would be high on my list of options.
I'm just going to jump in here really quickly, because I think everybody's had a chance to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I tend to side with Councilmember Danuski. I think we've done quite a bit to get people out to the water, and I think it's great that we've done all of that. But we do have a growing kind of target right here for growth in the city, and we have hundreds of new units that have come online in the last few years, and I think the City Hall Park is a perfectly reasonable way to try to reallocate the funding. I would ask staff, though, so Councilmember Curtis kind of got to this. I'm not sure if the answer that I heard from staff got to my concerns. When you spoke with Councilmember Dombrowski's office about this, did they have any thoughts on any of the specific projects and how likely they might be, or was it just very high level?
I remember the conversation I had with him a few months ago. He automatically went straight to the boathouse as the next best idea. But again, it was a casual conversation. It was, that was what he knew about. I don't think he knew about City Hall Phase 2 Park or anything like that. I don't think he knew about the need to finish Bastyr ball fields or anything like that.
Okay. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Well, I think most of you know that I was involved in getting rowing going from day one with KWAC, so I certainly am a rowing supporter, certainly am supportive of making sure we get a boathouse built, but I'm cognizant of the tremendous growth in our downtown and the lack of a park that kids can walk to. And I am feeling like this is an important opportunity that I would hate to miss. That said, it's really disappointing that we can't figure out a way to actually use the funds for what they were originally allocated for, which is ball fields. And I'm not seeing a path forward there and the only thing I was thinking is, taking Ms. Finley's comment is, is there any way to use a part of that to leverage a relationship with NSD around the one field that seems to have some unused capacity, which is at Kenmore Junior High. So my thought is, if there's any leftover money at City Hall Park to maybe do that. Other than that, there wouldn't be enough in this, it sounds like, to really do a good job at either Bastyr or St. Ed's. But I I guess nor would we have time, I guess, to finish those. So all that's to say, it's disappointing that we can't figure out a way forward.
Councilmember Curtis?
Just first to comment on City Hall Park, I'm also in favor of that one. The little blue area on the right-hand side of our picture, I think that is still the storm retention
That's correct.
pond. So the court wouldn't be directly up against the building. So I think there's enough of a buffer there. As the weeds and trees and stuff get taller, it'll create a little more buffer. My concern with going a totally different direction, like coordinating with the school district, is just money has to be used by a certain time. And if we're in a theoretical, let's do something, I just don't think that will get where we need to go. Spending money on a discrete project fast enough.
Councilmember Smith?
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate Councilmember Shrevenick's comments on that, because I would love to be able to see a viable path forward that addresses the playing capacity needs and really gets to the meat of why Councilmember Dembowski pushed and worked towards getting this grant. Unfortunately, because of the time constraints and because of the lack of control that the city has, I don't see those as really viable means, and I do see immense value in having the urban park benefiting a lot of people. And I think to the benefit of those that came to speak for the boathouse, I think what gets lost in this discussion is the tremendous amount that the city has already spent and has plans to spend on waterfront activity and getting people to the water. And I know it looks like maybe we don't care on that front, but I'd say it's just the opposite. We've cared with a pretty laser-focused commitment over the last few years, and with our walkways and waterways bond issue, in addition to other parks capital projects. So although I think it would be nice to be able to have that, I do believe there's also a segment of the population that I think can benefit immensely from pursuing the City Hall Park.
Councilmember Danuski?
I guess I'd like to make a motion that we reallocate the money towards the City Hall Park.
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Councilmember Shrevenick?
Well, if it doesn't use up all of it, could the remainder go toward add-ons or whatever is needed with the boathouse? I don't know.
We'd have to ask the county that, if they're okay with splitting into two
I see what you're saying.
projects.
Yeah.
And could we ask the county if the City Hall Park would be competitive, and if not, then?
Then we would come back and, or, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that works.
Any other, Councilmember Curtis?
I guess that would be my concerns. If Councilmember Dembowski has an idea in his mind what would qualify, and if he didn't choose this because he didn't know about it, that's fine, let's educate him. But if he says, no, I really still like that one better than this one, and it may make a difference whether the council says yes or not, I'd be happy to switch. But I think the discussion of the council shows a balance and a need that we haven't really fully met, and we have done a lot of waterfront activities.
Yeah, I would echo the statements of my colleagues here. I think we should leave things open as much as possible with staff to be flexible. If the message we get back from Councilmember Dembowski is that City Hall Park is a no-go, then I think we need to just be able to focus and move our attention, possibly without even a meeting with us, back over to the boathouse, so we don't make our timeline any longer than it absolutely has to be. Any other discussion? Councilmember Curtis?
Would it be appropriate to add an amendment to this one, saying that if this wasn't approved by council, we could give permission for staff to go ahead and discuss the completing the boathouse?
I think an amendment.
Is that too confusing?
No, I think an amendment makes sense. I would word it a little bit differently, though. I might say something along the lines of if feedback from Councilmember Dabowski's office is not favorable, then we will pursue the boathouse. Because what you were proposing would kind of require it to go through the whole county process. At that point, we might lose the funding completely. So I think we need to really get the solid feedback from Councilmember Dabowski's office first.
Capture that intent, and I'll use that as an amendment.
Councilmember Marshall?
If that was an amendment, does it need a second?
Okay, we have an amendment to the.
Not seconding it?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have an amendment and a second. Do we have any discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Marshall?
Yes, I think we ought to leave the options open at this point for not only the boathouse, but potentially the skate park roof or a partnership with the school district. I think we shouldn't limit ourselves at this point, and we should cross that bridge when we come to it with Councilmember Dembowski.
Councilor Smith, did I see your hand up?
Yes,
All right.
yeah, I, pretty much same sentiments. I don't, if we get to a point where he relays to us that that's not possible to use the grant funds for the City Hall Park, then I think we should just revisit this discussion and again, have all options on the table, and maybe we'll have more information on other options. So I wouldn't want to commit until we actually know what the issue is and what we're trying to solve. Maybe it's a partial grant. I mean, I just don't know. And so to me, I won't support the amendment because I feel like it ties us in a way that we don't know what the implications are going to be.
Councilmember Shribnick?
Well, now I have a slightly different comment, but maybe more of a question. So if we leave it open and it would require coming back to council, would that create more problems in terms of getting something done in the time frame? I am a little concerned about the time frame.
I think we can get Councilmember Dembowski's reaction pretty quickly.
Okay.
I had a meeting scheduled with him for December 3rd. As of today, it just got moved to December 10th, but I plan on spending an hour with him on December 10th, talking about this and several other issues.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yeah, I won't be supporting the amendment, not because I don't like the idea, because I think that we probably would land on the boathouse. But it does make sense to just come back and regroup, and I think that could be done pretty quickly.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, sorry, I should have added, the other thing is, if he says it's not what he wants necessarily, but that's different than saying, can you do it? So it may be that it might not have been his initial focus, and it may not be something that he generally thought was the right use, but it may also be something that he's able to do, and he would support us if that's what, as a council, we chose to do. So I think that because of, words do matter on something like this. I think it's best to leave it open.
Councilmember Curtis?
I'm happy to leave it open. I think, though, it sounded like Councilmember Dembowski would have to persuade the rest of King County council members to spend this money. And so I think he needs to be fully, absolutely behind whatever we choose. It can't be just, well, Kenmore wanted it, I don't really, but I'll bring it forward. The answer, that lack of enthusiasm, I think, would show, and I think it would be less likely to be accepted. But I'm happy to just go forward with our initial proposal. So I'll probably vote against it as it comes up, as we talk about the amendment.
Okay, well then, we saw the amendment on the table. Is there any further discussion? All right, let's vote on the amendment then. Clerk, can you take the roll?
Yep. Councilmember Danuski?
No.
Sorry?
No.
No. Councilmember Curtis?
No.
Councilmember Marshall?
No.
Councilmember Shribnick?
No.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Failed.
Okay, so what was our original motion then? I'm sorry. Is it,
I think it was just to reallocate the grant funding to the City Hall Park.
okay, I want to make sure we're on the same
Yeah.
page there. Do we have any further discussion on the original motion? Seeing no discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith? Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski,
Yes.
passed.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That's all the direction you needed, right? Okay. Moving on to adopt resolution 18315, establishing surface water management service charge rates for 2019 through 2024. Richard Sawyer, Environmental Services Manager. And I think you've got somebody to introduce.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. In addition to adoption of the resolution, I also brought Ashley Edelman here this evening. She is the city's new surface water technician. She actually has been filling in as a temporary technician for us since last summer of last year. She was a seasonal hire to help with surface water inspections, and then to help kind of fill the needs that we've had with just the increase in workload. She's been helping us this year with facility inspections, education outreach programs, utility locates, kind of just all the duties that come with the job. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of let her come and introduce her. And she comes from University of Washington, biology major, so she's been a great asset to the team. So I don't know if you guys had questions or.
Do you want to say a few words?
Thank you. I've really enjoyed working here. This isn't something that you learn in school. Surface water is very experience-based, and I've been very fortunate to kind of be mentored by Richard and Art Simpson, the other surface water technician, to be kind of pushed along in this field, and I'm very grateful to be a permanent addition to the team.
Any questions? Councilmember Smith.
I'd just like to say welcome, and the world cannot have too many Huskies. So.
Any other comments? Go Dogs. Welcome to Kenmore.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you, and we're glad that your position is now permanent, so welcome to the team.
Thank you very much.
That being said, so as you recall, in October 30th, staff presented some proposed surface water management service charge rates to council and received direction at that meeting, which produced the rates provided with the resolution you see in front of you today. On November 19th, a public hearing was held. There were no public comments provided at that meeting, and so I am coming back today to ask that council vote and adopt the resolution, which would adopt the fees provided in the council packet before you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Sawyer? Councilmember Marshall.
So apologies, and remind me, Mr. Sawyer, this was for new construction?
These are the annual surface water rates that are already in place since corporation, so we would be updating those. I believe the new construction charge that you're referring to is the general facilities charge, which has been discussed. That's not part of this resolution. This is just updating those annual rates. The capital facilities charge or the general facilities charge will be, we're coming back to you in early next year after we kind of fine tune the ordinance and resolution needed for that. And we'll be doing that separately. So this will just be the annual rates in this resolution.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 18315, establishing surface water management service charge rates for 2019 through 2024.
So moved.
And I'll second. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Danuski,
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Passed.
All right, thank you very much. Item C on the business agenda, Resolution 18314, adopting the City of Kenmore's 2019 fee schedule. Keela Whiteman, Permit Specialist.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. My name is Tila Whiteman. I'm the permit specialist for Development Services. I'm also a Husky. I thought I should mention that. I'm here tonight with Brian Hampson, the Development Services Director. We are bringing forward our annual update to our fee schedule. This is the 2019 fees. All the changes are listed in the agenda bill that you see on the screen. The main changes we made were updating the format from a Word document to an Excel spreadsheet to make it easier to update and also search fees. We also increased development services fees by the Consumer Price Index 3.6%, which does include transportation and park impact fees, but does not include appeal fees, school impact fees, annual use right-of-way, some connection permits, special events permits, and memorial signs. It also includes surface water fees that Richard just mentioned. So we're recommending approval of this resolution to adopt the fee schedule. I think Brian had some comments to make.
I wanted to point out a couple things. One thing was the pre-application fee, and we had some discussions previously about the pre-application fee. So the recommendation in this ordinance or resolution is to remain it as free. If there's no questions or discussions on that, I'll move on to our second concern is.
Councilor Marshall?
Question on that, and what was like a general summary of not putting a fee on the pre-application fees?
Generally, just to provide a more, like a better quality program for a developer, something to incentivize them to come in and do a pre-application and sit down with our development review team instead of charging for that fee. Previously, our fee for pre-apps were roughly in a range of $150, so they didn't really cover the administrative cost with that. But over the last year or so, we've had about 50 pre-application meetings. But now our pre-application meetings are from everything from just a general inquiry to a full-blown subdivision. And so we're getting a lot better comments to our customers to be able to go back and sit down and bring up plans and stuff. And so if we were to assign a fee to it, it would be for projects that require pre-application meetings. And so in our code, our land use code, there are some applications that require a pre-application meeting, so that would be specifically for that. So we haven't had 50 of those types of applications.
I also did receive some feedback from another department that we should be charging if a property has more than one pre-app in a year. We've had only a handful that have had over two.
Councilor Smith?
That's interesting. So can you tell me, what would be an example of when somebody may have 2 or 3 pre-apps in a year?
The one that I can think of off the top of my head initially started, it was a residential area. They proposed to build townhomes, and we kind of told them the process to go through conditional use permit, and then they came back later with single-family lots instead. And then again, I think they changed the number of lots from, I can't remember, just a minimal amount.
Councilor Marshall?
Was there any attempt or idea of capturing any foregone revenue from potential pre-application fees in the new fee schedule at all for this, or not?
No, it really wasn't. There's sometimes a lot of the properties themselves, they change ownership, and it could be a totally different designer or design company like Tila was talking about, and it really is complicated when you're trying to impose previous fees from a previous application or development idea on a new project. So we didn't take that into account.
Any other questions on this? All right, why don't we
The
go to the
other
next?
important item in this fee schedule is that it still has the multifamily school impact fees. And we've recently been challenged on our townhome projects. And so if you remember back in our school impact fee discussion, we had called townhomes the same thing as a single-family residence. And so the first townhome project has applied for it after the impact fees were put into place, has challenged it. And so we're going through an appeal process, and it could be a good possibility that we'll need to come back in the near future and change our code.
Okay. Any questions on that? Councilmember Smith?
I just want to, so was it because, so these were townhomes that are being charged the full single-family rate? And that's what they were challenging? They wanted to
That's correct.
challenge to diminish lower multifamily rate?
In the school district's capital facility plan, they differentiated between a single-family, a townhome, and a multifamily. But what we did when we adopted the resolution was to include townhomes as a single family, because as you remember, our single-family zoning districts allow townhouses to be built. And instead of developer choosing to build the townhome option and get out of paying impact fees, we chose to include them as the same rate as a single-family rate.
No, I'm glad, because, I mean, a lot of them are 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths or so, just like a single-family residence, so it makes no sense to.
So what may happen is the school district, we're in discussions with the school district right now, and they're probably going to, they could say that it was their idea was to include, to classify townhomes as townhomes and not as a single family. So it's a good possibility that we could lose.
And who makes that decision? Is that going through court, or
That
is that?
first goes through our hearing examiner,
Oh, okay.
if we go that far.
Okay. Councilmember Shrubnik?
And my understanding is, at the same time, the school district is also looking at whether they're going to ask for impact fees for the multifamily, which would include in their definition townhomes then.
That's correct, but the rate that they're going to be looking at for multifamily, including townhome, is going to be substantially less than what it will be for a single family. So currently, they're looking at around $10,000 or $10,500 for a single family. They're asking for around $16,000 or $17,000 next year. And with that next year rate, I think the multifamily and townhome rate is about $1,800 to $2,000. And so there's still a substantial difference. And so and the reason that we're really hearing is they haven't had enough information or data in their books to be able to compare what that school rate is that comes out of a townhome. And so they could get more information, include that in their capital facility plan in the future, and increase that rate or have it more comparable to that single family rate. But that could be some time.
Is there anything else?
That was it. I just wanted to point those two things out.
Okay, do we have any additional questions, comments, thoughts? All right, the chair will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 18314, adopting the City of Kenmore's 2019 fee schedule.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Passed.
All right, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Item D, 2017-2018 biennial budget amendments. Joanna Gregory, Finance and Administration Director.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. Are there any milkshakes on the line tonight?
No comment.
Okay. Good to know. So, the ordinance before you this evening is the third and final amendment to the 2017-18 biennial budget. And that's an important closing procedure to ensure that no fund will exceed its legal appropriation budget. There are also instances where the council has previously endorsed or approved a project or program for which a budget should be established, such as with the public workshop startup and transition. And in some cases, revenue projections have exceeded the established budget and compensate for increases in budgeted expenditures, therefore offsetting a potential negative impact on a fund's budgeted reserves. At the council meeting of November 19th, I reviewed for you the details of the proposed budget amendments, which are included in your packet. The funds affected are the general fund, the street fund, the real estate excise tax fund, the park capital fund, and the Sammamish River Bridge Fund. Ordinance 18-0475 includes these amendments to the budget for 2017-18 and is recommended for adoption. Are there any questions regarding the budget amendments?
Okay. I don't see any questions. I don't see any comments. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the 2017-2018 biennial budget amendments.
I so move.
Second.
We've got a motion. We have a second. Do we have any discussion? Being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrevenick?
Yes.
Passed.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your work this year on the budget, Joanne. Appreciate it. Staff report.
Yeah, just one thing, Your Honor. The Dragon Boat Club that we have, they've been in conversations with the school district to have a high school dragon boat program. And today I met with the school superintendent and the city managers of Bothell and Woodinville. And the superintendent came up with an idea to have a dragon boat race for all 4 boards. So the 3 city councils and the school board. And I told them that my city council is really good at rowing in the same direction and that we would definitely win. So
I need to hit the gym.
What's that?
I need to hit the gym, apparently.
But anyway, so she was serious about it and thought it would be fun to have a dragon boat race. And, you know, I think the club has 4 10-passenger dragon boats. And so it could be all 7 of you, Rod, me, the city clerk. And that would make 10. So that's all I have.
Okay. Councilor reports, comments, initiatives. Councilor Smith?
I'd just like to add that we get the Kevlar boat if one exists.
Councilmember Marshall?
No report.
Councilmember Curtis?
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Shrevenick?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on the email about the St. Edward's letter of support regarding the trail plan idea. And I would like to make a motion that we do support that. To me, having a plan for trails is a lot better than a willy-nilly decision on trails. A plan is better than a no plan. So, and presumably with a plan, they would have to get public input. There would be a process. So I would like to see us support this. I don't have anything else.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have any seconds?
Can you repeat the motion? I'm sorry. So the
Oh, sorry.
So to support.
Support, to provide the letter of support that was requested regarding the St. Edward State Park trail planning.
Okay, thank you.
Came in an email.
Second it?
All right, we've got a motion, a second. Do we have any discussion? Do we want to hear from staff a little bit on this, maybe? Councilor Marshall?
Perhaps staff first, before I make comments, sure.
Mr. City Manager?
Sure. The camp that was adopted in 2008, I believe, talks about the need for a trail plan. And so it looks like they're applying for some grant funding. The Washington State Parks is applying for some grant funding to actually create such a plan. I forwarded you an email about it just this afternoon, so many of you may have not had a chance to read it. But right now, that park is seeing over 1 million visitors a year, And there's a lot of what they call social paths that have been created and that are wreaking havoc on the environment. And there's a lot of wear and tear on the existing trails. And so I think they want to just create a plan that improves the existing. My question is, are they going to create more trails? And if so, what does that do? But that would all be explored in the planning process. So they're just applying for grant funds right now to do trail planning, a master plan for trails. And they'd like us to offer a letter of support for the grant.
Councilor Marshall?
Yes, you know, I would urge that we, I mean, I didn't know about it until then quite recently or just now as it was, and I'd like to at least take a look at the language of state parks to see what connotations they might have or not have in their parks planning. Maybe it's a very simple statement, I don't know, but I'd like to see what I can glean from any sort of direction they may be taking or not taking. It sounds innocuous enough right now, but I think we need to wait. And also, I think we ought to err on the side of caution in having, you know, public input even at this very early stage.
Councilmember Curtis, then Councilmember Smith.
So in general, paths are created randomly, and I'm in favor of having an organized place where paths are safe and they don't erode the hillside. And so I'd be in favor of this. And it looks like they do talk about public, you know, we run public process to engage the stakeholder. It's going to be a long process. So I think there will be plenty input. Nobody's going to rush anything through. But I think it can only improve the park and not harm it.
Councilor Smith.
Yeah, as a member of that camp board over 10 years ago, I remember there was a lot of discussion on the trails and trying to make sure they had proper maintenance and that they eliminated a lot of the spur trails that went to private properties and did things that were other access points to the park that they didn't want. I don't know if that's part of the plan or not, but I do know that there was a lot of discussion around trails. I do think one of the things that, and it's fair that everybody's aware of it, you know, there was even somebody on that board that wanted to create new bike trails further to the west part, to the water and everything. And so, so I think I would rather that process go through a planning process and at least everything's open and we understand what it is and whether it's good or not, I don't know, but I'm definitely support it. And also as a hiker on a lot of those, I mean, I'm on those trails all the time and some of them really need some maintenance. And so in that plan, it may also create ability to have more of a long-term maintenance schedule that makes sense. So I would support it.
Any other comments? Councilor Marshall?
I guess I would say my distrust of Washington State Parks, you know, stemmed from its biased handling of the St. Edwards project and that it never really considered any alternatives in a practical sense to the Daniels proposal. So I don't think they're capable, at least with the current leadership, of forming even a viable or trustworthy plan for a path. I think they're quite incapable of it. So I don't think we ought to support that.
And speaking for myself, I don't see any harm in them getting RCO money to prepare a trails plan for the park. But that's just me. So I don't see any more discussion. Clerk, can you take the roll?
Councilmember Shrevenick?
Yes?
Councilmember Marshall?
No.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Passed.
All right. We're on Councilmember Shrevenick. Are you done with? All right. Councilmember Danuski.
And nothing to add.
And I've got nothing to add. So seeing nothing more to come before us, Kenmore City Council is now adjourned.